iron those bell bottoms, put some Jerry curl in your hair, get those disco moves ready, because it's prom night, baby. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well out there, and grab yourself a date, folks, because we're heading to the prom. But before we head off to the prom, do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here, I greatly would appreciate that. And before we get into the review of this film, I will be at Carolina Fear Fest this weekend. I'll be there all day Saturday and all day Sunday. I'm going to be there with my good buddy Dale_A from the Bat and Spider podcast. So if you're going to that convention and you happen to see us, stop us and say hi. We can talk all things horror. They have a pretty cool lineup. There's going to be some great vendors. Should be a really fun weekend. Barbara Crompton's going to be there. Dee Wallace, David Naughton is going to be there, and many others. And I'm looking forward to it. But now we're going to talk about the 1980 slasher film, Prom Night. Yes. Prom Night came out July 18th of 1980. It's rated R. It's an hour and 32 minutes long. Had a budget around $1.4 million, and upon release, it made $14.7. So this was a nice little hit for Avco Embassy, who released this film in America. Paul Lynch directed this film, and we got a nice little cast here. We got Jamie Lee Curtis doing her Scream Queen thing that she did back in those early days of her career. She plays Kimberly. Leslie Nielsen, yes, that Leslie Nielsen plays Mr. Hammond, and he is Kimberly's father and the principal of this high school where this prom takes place and the mayhem takes place. Michael Tuff plays Alex, and he is Kimberly's brother and Mr. Hammond's son. And Anne-Marie Martin plays Wendy, the hot, bitchy girl of this high school. And the only reason I even bring her up, although she does have a nice-sized role in this film, because she's been in some other things. She was in Halloween 2, the original Halloween 2, which came out after this. That came out in 82. A brief role. She is the girl that's with the nurse that has to make it to the hospital, and she goes, "You promised to take me home." That's her in that film. And she also co-wrote the 1996 blockbuster Twister. So yeah, I thought those were pretty notable on her filmography. Anyway, Prom Night starts off with these 9, 10-year-old kids running around this abandoned building playing this game about killers. And some of the kids gang up on this one little girl, yelling, the killers are coming, the killers are coming. And it gets out of hand, and the little girl ends up falling out this window and dies. Unbeknownst to anybody else, even these kids, they take off. They decide to keep it a secret and take off because they don't want to go to jail. Kind of like I Know You Did Last Summer, used kind of the same plot back in the 90s. It's almost the exact same thing, only they hit someone with their car. And that guy lived, though. But there's somebody that saw this take place. Nobody knows that somebody witnessed this horrific thing happen, but somebody noticed it. So fast forward, all these kids are seniors now, and we're introduced to Kimberly. It was her sister that got killed that day, and Alex's sister. And Kimberly's going to be the homecoming or the prom queen, and her boyfriend that she's dating, who was involved with her sister, she doesn't know that because nobody knows that they were involved, is actually dating him, who was involved with that, and then he's going to be the prom king. And basically, this movie's about leading up to prom and getting dates, and basically, no killing, honestly, in this movie happens until we get to prom. There's some creepy phone calls. We see some of those take place, and some of the people that were involved with this little girl's death receive these creepy phone calls. But there's really no killing until we get to prom, and that's when the mayhem happens. Pretty much we get kill after kill. Each of our people that were involved, plus some other people that weren't involved, they just happen to be there when the killer shows up, is dispatched in different ways. This movie isn't overly gory. I mean, it has violence and there's some blood. The goriest part is saved for the last kill, I would say. Definitely. And we'll get to that in a second. And there's disco dancing, and, there's people going off to have sex that get killed, and all the things you would expect from a slasher film. And then we get our finale. Kimberly's on stage waiting to be called out to receive her crown. And her boyfriend's on the other side of the stage waiting to get his call to come out to get his crown. And they're going to have their dance. Well, some of these bullies they knock out her boyfriend and tie him up. And the one main bully is going to go out in his place as a big prank. This guy's a total dick throughout the whole movie. And the killer comes up behind him and chops off his head, and his head rolls out onto the stage and down this runway in a pretty cool effect shot. And the place goes nuts, screaming, and starts taking off. And then we get a final confrontation. Kimberly gets her boyfriend out of his binds, and they're trying to get away, and the killer strikes. The killer has a ski mask on, and he's dressed in all black. And they're fighting and they're wrestling, trying to get away from the killer. And finally, Kimberly hits the killer in the head with the axe, and it goes down the side. You don't really get to see the wound all that much. You see blood. And the killer kind of stumbles out into the front of the school where the cops are. And when Kimberly realizes it's her brother that's been the killer the whole time, and she tells the cops not to shoot, and he takes the mask off, and it is his brother, and he ends up dying because he's the one who witnessed what happened to his sister. So you're kind of sympathetic to his plight, because these kids were total little dicks, what they did to this little girl. Even though it clearly was an accident, but they definitely helped cause it. So he's definitely one of the more sympathetic killers. And this is a whodunit, although I've seen this movie a bunch of times over the years. This is the first time I've seen it in quite some time. But again, this movie isn't overly gory. Again, there's really no kills until you get to the prom, which is in the last part of the film. Once it hits there, then it steps on the gas of being a slasher film. Up until that, yeah, there's some creepy phone calls, and there's some inner drama, and there's some stalking, but there's no real violence until that last part of the movie. Kind of like Halloween, I guess, because this movie was birthed out of what happened with Halloween. As a matter of fact, the director decided to make this film. He had another film planned, and he talked to the producer, Yerwin Yablans, who produced Halloween and Fade to Black and other horror films, and he said, put it around a holiday or an event and make a movie about that. And he came up with Prom Night. And he got Jamie Lee Curtis, who was coming off of Halloween. In the 80s, she did The Fog, Terror Train, her two Canadian slasher films, Terror Train and Prom Night, which she shot back-to-back up in Canada. This one was shot in Toronto. And Terror Train was shot outside of Quebec. So she spent some time in Canada because she did two films back-to-back. Avco Embassy ended up picking this up to release it. Paramount was going to pick up to release it at first. But they were only going to give it a limited release, and they really wanted a wider release, and Avco Embassy gave them that, so they went with them. Jamie Lee Curtis did all of her own stunts in that last final brawl at the prom, so she was really involved with that. This film was made in 24 days in Toronto. Going back to what I was saying earlier about Jamie Lee Curtis in those early days, as we all know, she was in Halloween. She was Laurie Strode. But then she would go on to do The Fog with John Carpenter, re-team with John Carpenter. And then she did Terror Train and Prom Night. Then she went off to do Halloween 2 and Road Game. So she had a slew of horror films that she did early part of her career until she did Trading Places. And then she kind of went away from horror until the mid to late 90s when she came back for Halloween H2O. Although she also did Virus, which we consider a sci-fi horror film. And Avco Embassy was a small distribution arm because they distributed The Fog and John Carpenter's Escape from New York. So it's kind of all incestuous a little bit about how everybody was working together back then. Yerwin Yablans given the director the idea, or at least the spark of an idea, to go off and decide to write and direct Prom Night. Other things I like about this film, well, I like the way it's shot. It has this soft, almost dreamlike quality to the film. And I think it works, especially watching it last night on that special edition Blu-ray from Synapse. Actually, it's a nice little documentary interview with the director and some of the actors that were on the film. It's actually, and the transfer is pretty damn good. It's a 2K transfer, and it's the best I've ever seen this film look. So yeah, if you like this film, it's actually a worthwhile pickup if you're a physical media nut like I am. I like the way it's shot. I think he does a nice job with the film overall. Do I think the film takes a little bit too long to get to the good stuff, especially since it's a slasher film? Yeah, I think there should be a little bit more in the middle just to punch it up a little bit. But overall, this is a solid slasher. I like this film. I always have. I like the whodunit aspect of it, although it's kind of obvious as the movie goes along who it is. Jamie Lee Curtis is great here. The other actors are pretty damn good as well. Leslie Nielsen's, it's a gas seeing him in this. Like I said, this is one of his last serious films before he went off to start. He did Airplane. Well, he did Creepshow after this, Airplane and the Naked Gun movies. But this is one of his last serious films before he got into all the spoof movies and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, is this a perfect slasher film? No. Is it one of the best ones? No, but it's definitely a solid entry into the 80s slasher genre. At the end of the day, I would give Prom Night an 8 out of 10. I like it that much. Yeah, it drags a little bit, but at the end of the day, I still think it's a pretty damn solid, fun slasher film. 8 out of 10 for Prom Night. Have you ever seen this one? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Share this video. I would appreciate that. I'll be back soon with another video, but until next time, bye.